What's behind the Conjuring? Hi, everyone. It's me, and today we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorite movies, The Conjuring. Before we get started, I just want to mention that this is going to be a spoiler-free zone. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want it ruined, then you should probably stop watching this right now. If you have seen the movie and are ready for some serious spoilers, then let's get started. So for those of you who haven't seen the film, it was released back in 2013 and is based on a true story. The film follows two paranormal investigators, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who are called into a Rhode Island farmhouse to help a family being tormented by a dark presence in their home. As the Warrens begin to investigate, they soon realize that the house is built on an ancient Native American burial ground and that the family is being targeted by an evil spirit known as Bathsheba Sherman. With the help of the family, the Warrens perform an exorcism to drive the demon out of the house. But when things go wrong, they must fight to save the family from certain death. The movie is really good and has all the makings of a classic haunted house story, a creepy old house, a malevolent ghost, and a group of unsuspecting victims. But what makes The Conjuring stand out from other haunted house stories is the way it's told. The filmmakers did a great job of building suspense and really made you feel like the characters were in danger. There are some truly scary moments in the film, and it's definitely one of the best horror movies of recent years. In addition to the great story, The Conjuring also benefits from excellent performances from its cast. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are perfect as Ed and Lorraine Warren, and the supporting cast is equally strong. As I said before, the movie is based on a true story, or at least it's supposed to be. The filmmakers took some creative liberties with the story, but the basic premise is actually from a case that the real-life Warren investigated. However, the Warrens weren't the first people to investigate the case. In fact, there were several other paranormal investigators before them who had all concluded that the house was haunted. One of these investigators was Harry Houdini, the famous magician and escape artist. Houdini was a skeptic of all things paranormal, but he was intrigued by the Perron family story. He traveled to the farmhouse and performed several experiments, but he was unable to conclude that the house was haunted. Despite his skepticism, Houdini was so disturbed by the events that he eventually left the house without finishing his investigation. Another investigator was Albert Hopkins, a member of the New England Society for Psychic Research. Hopkins was one of the first people to use scientific methods to investigate paranormal claims. He used things like EMF meters and spirit boxes to try to communicate with ghosts. Hopkins was able to gather some interesting evidence, but he too was unable to come to a definitive conclusion. Perhaps the most famous person to investigate the case was famed author and lecturer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Conan Doyle was a believer in spiritualism, which is the belief that the spirits of the dead can communicate with the living. He was intrigued by the Perron family's story, and he traveled to the farmhouse to meet with the family and investigate the case himself. Conan Doyle was convinced that the house was haunted and that the Perron family was being tormented by the ghost of a young girl named Cindy. He even claimed to have seen the ghost of Cindy in one of the house's bedrooms. While Conan Doyle believed that the house was haunted by a single ghost, the Warrens believed that there was more than one entity in the house. They identified three main spirits, including the ghost of Bathsheba Sherman, who was the main antagonist of the film. But the Warrens also believed that there were other spirits in the house, including the ghost of a man named Roger Perron, who was the previous owner of the house. Roger Perron bought the house in the early 19th century, and he lived there with his wife and daughter. One day, Roger went into the woods behind the house to gather firewood. When he came back, he found that his wife and daughter had disappeared. A search of the area revealed no sign of them, and it was as if they had vanished into thin air. Roger was never the same after the disappearance, and he eventually sold the house and moved away. His daughter's body was later found in a shallow grave in the woods behind the house, and it was clear that she had been murdered. But the case was never solved, and it's not clear what happened to her mother. The Warrens believed that Roger's daughter was the ghost that Conan Doyle had seen, and that Roger himself was the ghost that was haunting the house. This is where things start to get a little confusing. In the film, it's suggested that Bathsheba Sherman was the only ghost in the house, and that she was responsible for all of the hauntings. However, in the real-life case, things were much different. In fact, Bathsheba Sherman was never even at the house. You see, Bathsheba Sherman was a real person who lived in the house next door to the Perron family. She was an elderly woman who was known for her mean-spirited nature. One day, she invited the Perron daughters over to her house to show them her collection of dolls. The daughters accepted the invitation, but they soon realized that they had made a mistake. Bathsheba's house was dirty and dilapidated, and she herself was strange and unsettling. The girls tried to leave, but Bathsheba blocked their path and threatened to harm them if they didn't stay. Eventually, the girls were able to escape, but Bathsheba put a curse on them and their family. The curse followed the Perron family for years, and it was eventually transferred to the house when they sold it. It was this curse that the Warrens were dealing with, not a ghost. Now, I'm not sure why the filmmakers decided to make Bathsheba Sherman a ghost in the film. Perhaps they thought it would make for a more interesting story. But whatever the reason, it's important to remember that Bathsheba Sherman was never a ghost in a real-life case. Another thing that is important to remember is that the Warrens were the first people to deal with the curse. In fact, every family that lived in the house after the Perrons had to deal with it. The filmmakers didn't really do a good job of explaining this, and it could be confusing if you're not familiar with the case. So what really happened in the case? Unfortunately, we may never know for sure. The Warrens kept detailed notes on their investigations, but they destroyed them before they died. However, we do know that the family that currently owns the house has never had any problems. That's because they had the house blessed by a priest, and they've never seen or heard anything paranormal since. If you're interested in learning more about the case, I highly recommend reading The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson. It's a great book, and it gives a really good overview of the case. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also, let us know what you think about the movie in the comments below. We hope you'll subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.